can't remember the last time a nonfiction book hit so close to home for me, kind of uncomfortably close. So this video could be viewed as a kind of companion to my previous video about self-interested reasons to volunteer. And it's pointing to a broader thesis in what I want to do with this channel right now, which is to talk about interesting ways that I'm trying to live in the real world, away from screens and the imperatives of late stage capitalism or whatever it is, this weird situation we're in, this weird moment where life is lived on the internet, where we're drowning in information, feeling a bit dissociated, disenfranchised. So that's kind of the thesis I'm working with right now. So I recently encountered this book by Eitan Hersh called Politics is for Power: How to Move Beyond Political Hobbyism, Take Action, and Make Real Change. And when I initially looked for some more media coverage on the book online, there wasn't much out there, which actually isn't surprising. It was published in June 2020. So most of us were stuck at home, drinking and watching Netflix, going a little crazy. We weren't exactly focused on how to get more involved in politics. But Politics is for Power, it makes the argument that too many people engage in politics as entertainment and self-gratification, but they actually take little or no direct action in politics itself beyond putting an X in a box every 4 years. If they do that, and I've missed a few elections myself. Now, the people that Hersh is talking about in this book, and I'm certainly one of them, read a lot of political news, post on social media, rant with friends about politics, and have all kinds of ideas about the way things should be. But we, and again, I do mean we, because this kind of political action or political inaction, is most prevalent among university educated white men. Statistically, we don't participate in political organizing, we don't canvass for candidates, or do anything else to actually gain power and shape the world we want to see. Oh, but we talk and we've got opinions, but not a lot of action. So you can see why this hit me kind of close. So the idea that so many of us consume political news largely for entertainment and self-gratification, this felt pretty real to me. And I dipped a toe into political activity in the past, supporting campaigns of people I knew, attending a couple of activist meetings. But it was more, I'd say, political tourism than really dedicated activism. I know all kinds of important things about political history and political theory and economics and so on, but I wasn't really doing anything with that knowledge. And suddenly all the animated conversations I'd had about politics felt, to use an overused term these days, all of that felt kind of performative. I remember when I first heard the people in the MAGA movement had taken to calling liberals and progressives non-player characters or NPCs. As you know, an NPC is a video game term for background characters walking around within the game. They don't actually do anything. They're just part of the background, part of the story, but they're irrelevant to whatever quest you're on as the player. An NPC is basically a term for performative political engagement that accomplishes nothing. I have to admit that it was a clever insult because it was largely true. The MAGA movement they had the initiative at that time, and Trump won a second term. If the point of politics is to get people elected who will make the world the way you want it, MAGA achieved it. And so the idea of political news as entertainment, I think, also fits with many of the criticisms people have about the 24-hour cable news phenomenon specifically. So news organizations that get the revenue from advertising obviously need you to watch ads. They get paid for eyeballs on those ads. So the incentive to inform citizens doesn't always align to their profit motives. And that's why so much news focuses on sensational stories and the scandals and If it bleeds, it leads was a motto long before the 24-hour news cycle. CNN itself was sharply criticized after Trump was elected in 2016 because he got so much airtime on CNN. They gave him a voice, even among people who supposedly were kind of more centrist. And long before he was a serious contender, he just got all this free publicity on TV. But we love to watch and or maybe hate watch. The crazy things he did and said were compelling TV, and we sort of enjoyed the outrage and the foolishness of it all. And then CNN made huge profits, and Trump got elected. And let's be honest, do people really watch MSNBC or Fox to get like critical information about about the political process, or how to live their lives, or what choices they should make? Or do they watch to have their point of view confirmed and see the other side vilified? It's good guys and bad guys, us versus them. We put on our jersey and watch the game. The new political podcasts aren't really any different, and really, why would they be? If there isn't actual action following all this sort of talking. Another darker thought crossed my mind. Was I staying out of politics? Because I had it pretty good as a middle class white guy. I wasn't being denied access to the necessities of life. When I accessed government services, I was treated with respect. Marginalized people don't often get that, and I wasn't feeling that. A related thought came from an excellent interview that Joshua Citarella recently did with Natalie Wynn of the ContraPoints YouTube channel. I'll put a link to that very long but excellent interview in the show notes. They talked about how people who identify as liberals, progressives, or even leftists seem to intentionally embrace hopeless causes, issues so big and intractable that no real solution is possible in the short or medium term. Things like ending capitalism or systemic racism, universal health care, or simply just expanding social services or the social safety net sort of seemingly aren't big enough for them. They want to really take down the system. And Natalie Wynn offered a kind of explanation that these people might actually identify with being the underdog, an outsider. And if you actually get into politics and take power, you really become the establishment, and then your identity as an outsider is over. And she said this just devastating quote: "They don't want to be in power and are horrified by the idea of participating in politics itself because it means compromising their virtue ethics." Being in politics really means compromise and small victories, and sometimes you lose, and sometimes you got to be in a coalition with people you don't really like or agree with. But I have another explanation. It's kind of a judgment, really, and ultimately a judgment myself. We choose causes for which no action can be taken because it makes us insulated from actually having to do anything about it. Of course, no one's saying you shouldn't read the news or stay informed, but the issue is it's not enough. And as a recovering news junkie, followed every outrage of the George W. Bush administration, I'd already come around to the idea that the daily political soap opera and the minutia of what this person did or said today, that's effectively inert knowledge, especially if you don't do anything with it. And it stresses you out, so it's just not good for you. I felt pretty good about being able to explain the failure of mortgage-backed securities that caused the 2008 financial crisis. But, what am I doing to push for reform in the financial industry? Nothing. And even more absurd, it's not my country. I'm Canadian. What am I going to do about the New York Stock Exchange? So that felt a little silly. So in Politics for Power, Hersh offers examples of people who did real work for real people in their communities. Organizers who help mobilize people towards concrete goals, like getting more Spanish-speaking people in the Board of Education, or helping people gain American citizenship. Showing results earn them not just esteem in their communities, But when they later asked for support for a ballot initiative or to vote for a candidate, people were excited to help them because they saw that they were not just out for themselves. They really had a stake in the community. So if political participation is going to mean something more than entertainment and self-aggrandizing through media consumption, it needs to be about building the world we want rather than just a thought experiment or just sitting around and being angry. And I really feel that if educated middle-class people like me steadfastly refuse to get involved, refuse to risk any amount of comfort or security, refuse to sacrifice any leisure time, refuse to sacrifice anything at all, then we're going to fall the farthest. Forces in Canada continue to push for the privatization of our healthcare system. They want to maintain a housing market that's unaffordable for so many people. Then they want to concentrate wealth in fewer and fewer hands. Just the lack of competition in our economy is kind of a sad story in Canada. But we can stop them. These are winnable fights that are worth winning. And really, who else is going to stop them? The marginalized groups just trying to survive, the comfortable bourgeoisie who don't want to rock the boat because they've got their quartz countertops and whatever, billionaires who in Canada who, they could get on a jet and whisk themselves off to a different country to their bunker if they want. They're not going to help. So my solution for me to fight the kind of creeping dread of societal collapse is to get involved. I'm going to join the MDP. I'm going to get involved in actual political processes and political issues where I live. I want to knock on doors and talk to people, stuff envelopes, put up signs, whatever they want. Even if nothing changes and we lose every fight, it's better than being an NPC. Anyway, thanks for watching. Talk to you next time.